I want to say there's no way the UFC can give Cory Sandhagen a title shot over Aljamain Sterling, but we've seen crazier things happen. What up, Fightful fam, and welcome to your Fightful Fix UFC Fight Island 5 post-fight edition. We're going to take a look at a night full of highlight reel knockouts, including one from Cory Sandhagen and an all-time great entry from Joaquin Buckley. Now, before we get started, if you could please go ahead and hit subscribe and tap that notification bell. It goes such a long way to helping our channel grow, and a like on this video never hurts either. First up, Cory Sandhagen. What a coming out party for this guy. Scores a second round highlight reel spinning heel kick knockout of Marlon Moraes, immediately inserting himself into the title picture after a disappointing first round submission loss to Aljamain Sterling in his last fight. Sandhagen bounced back in about as impressive way as you can. He took such a sour loss and turned it into the most impressive finish of his UFC career. And he said something that I often echo, which is you learn more in defeat than in victory, and how he bounced back from his loss to Aljo, who is the #1 contender for Peter Yan's bantamweight title, shows that Sandhagen has a true ability to grow and is not just one of these overhyped, over-talked about, untested prospects. Where do we go from here? Well, Cory Sandhagen, very smart guy, very cerebral inside the cage and out, and he had the perfect opponents in mind for a subsequent outing. He said he would either like the returning TJ Dillashaw, yes, former bantamweight champ and former training partner of Sandhagen's, or Frankie Edgar, who was successful in his bantamweight debut earlier this year in a very close decision fight against Pedro Munoz. These are the two fights that make the most sense. If I'm not mistaken, Sandhagen and Edgar were actually expected to fight at one point, but that never really materialized, and Sandhagen was very disappointed. Sandhagen, very classy guy, said outright Aljamain Sterling should get the next title shot against Peter Yan, something fans in the media and definitely Aljo have been hollering about, but for some reason, even though Dana White said that Sterling will get the next shot, he has yet to actually finalize that fight. Fingers crossed that Aljamain gets the title fight, because there's really nothing else he can do at this point to deserve it or to earn it. There was speculation going into the fight that should Marlon Moraes win, that Marlon would leapfrog Aljo as Peter Yan's next opponent, but considering the fact that Cory Sandhagen just lost in very one-sided fashion to Sterling in his previous fight, I want to say there's no way the UFC can give Cory Sandhagen a title shot over Aljamain Sterling, but we've seen crazier things happen. Anywho, I think Cory Sandhagen definitely has the right idea. He fights TJ Dillashaw or Frankie Edgar, and the winner of that fight gets the next bantamweight title shot after Peter Yan and Aljamain Sterling match up. Of those two, I think TJ Dillashaw would be the more exciting fight for a number of reasons. One, despite looking good in his bantamweight debut, I don't think Frankie Edgar showed against Pedro Munoz what we needed to see to consider him as a very viable champion in this division. Additionally, Cory Sandhagen and TJ Dillashaw have a lot of the same sort of style, that very Dominic Cruz-esque, versatile, light on your feet, stand switching, kicks, punches, flowy combinations. So you can just imagine how much fun it would be to see those two guys scrap. And where does Marlon Moraes go from here? You know what? I was thinking about this after the loss, and Marlon Moraes has had one of the most intense roller coaster rides of any UFC fighter in recent memory. He joined the promotion in 2017, just 3 years ago, off the back of an incredible dominant run in World Series of Fighting. He loses to Rafael Assunção in his debut, but goes on to win, 4 consecutive fights, 3 by way of finish, including a knockout of Aljamain Sterling, a knockout of Jimmy Rivera, and a submission win over Rafael Assunção to avenge that loss, and set himself up for a title shot against Henry Cejudo. He was winning the Henry Cejudo fight early, but eventually succumbed in the third round. His gas tank was too low, and Henry Cejudo just sort of overwhelmed him. So it's interesting to see Moraes, who, after his initial setback, which is very common for champions coming into the UFC, to go on this huge rise to the top, much like Eddie Alvarez and Justin Gaethje. But unlike those guys, after losing the title fight, he just hasn't looked great. After losing the Cejudo fight, Marlon did bounce back technically by beating Jose Aldo by split decision, but a lot of people thought Aldo won that fight, and Aldo unfairly went on to get the next title shot over Moraes, and now he's lost to Sandhagen. So in some weird way, he's sort of like 0-3, you know what I mean? He has that Aldo win, but a lot of people thought he lost and he didn't really get a rub off of it. So he had this huge rise up, and now he is really stumbling in his last few outings. So where does Moraes go from here? If I'm looking at the top 10, I think maybe Pedro Munoz would make sense. He's also coming off of that loss to Frankie Edgar, but it was a very close fight, so you kind of see where Munoz stacks up in that division. Otherwise, 7 is Aldo, 8 is Rivera, 9 is Assunção, and 10 is Dominic Cruz. So unless you want to give someone outside of the top 10, maybe a Rob Font, ranked 11, a really big fight, I think Moraes versus Munoz is the only one that makes sense in the top 10. And before we wrap up, I want to give a quick shout out to the performance of the night winners. There were no fight of the nights tonight, but 50 G's went to Cory Sandhagen, who beat Marlon Moraes, Tom Breeze, who beat KB Buller via first round TKO, Chris Dawkins, who beat Rodrigo Nascimento by knockout in the first round, and Joaquin mother effing Buckley. Dude, this was insane. So Joaquin Buckley, Impa Kasagane fight on the undercard. Impa, huge, hyped up beast of a man who beat Maki Pitolo in a recent fight. And these guys came out swanging Derek Lewis style. Thick, strong, powerful dudes throwing everything they had at one another. And this was the sort of fight that you might be watching, you know, from between your fingernails, because it was that much of a nail-biting affair. Although I guess if your eyes are here, you're not really biting your nails. Anywho, things reached a fever pitch in the second, and Joaquin Buckley secured one of the top 5 greatest knockouts of all time in the UFC. Personally, I would rank it number 2, behind Yair Rodriguez's crazy back elbow knockout of Chan Sung Jung, the Korean Zombie, but just a hair ahead of Edson Barboza's, you know, soul-stealing spinning kick knockout of Terry Edom. I know that might be controversial a little bit, but you know what? Maybe it's recency bias, but I thought this was just super cool. So let me give you a breakdown if you missed it, but please head over to Fightful MMA. We've got the highlight reel up there. You got to check it out. So Impa Kasagane caught Buckley's heel, and while Buckley was on one foot, he managed to spin, jump, and land a spinning back kick straight to the jaw of Kasagane that completely separated him from consciousness, flatlined him, dropped him. It was without a doubt one of the best knockouts you will ever see, and the sort of thing that is going to live on UFC highlight reels for the rest of time. And that is all for today's Fightful Fix. Let me know in the comments section, what do you think are the 5 greatest knockouts in UFC history, and where does Joaquin Buckley sit in that ranking, if at all? If you like this video, the best way you can help our channel grow is by hitting subscribe and tapping the notification bell, and a like on this video never hurts either. Now, I know y'all hate this, but until I get a better one, and you're free to leave me some suggestions in the comments section, keep up with us for everything Fightful and so delightful.
Fightful.com.
Andrea Lee, I saw you looking thirsty on your last Instagram post.
I'm not sure what that means.
I'm not sure what that means.
Modeled for a pretty calendar once.
Did you call
She
it
saw pretty calendar.
God damn it. No, that's not it. No, don't apologize. Don't apologize. You don't need to apologize. Stop.